Hey guys, it's Mo, and as promised, I am going to be re-recording this, making sure that I have good audio because good night, nurse. I didn't realize that I was being picked up by my webcam. Any hoozle, this is the Scott Peterson state response to the Innocence Project wanting to do more DNA testing. Um, Look, I'm not a lawyerologist, but when you send a 337 page, like big D energy, these are all the things that, found you guilty kind of stuff. It's, uh, it definitely is interesting to me. I haven't seen responses this long. Again, not a lawyer from LayTube, loosely affiliated with, but not associated. Um, with, LawTube, if that is or isn't a thing, I don't know. But, I was not at a place in my life where I was really interested in trials when this trial was going on. I was actually failing basic, my darn ankles. My Achilles heel is really my Achilles heel. But I definitely wanted to go back because now I have seen states shade things, kind of maybe put more emphasis on something, maybe not follow up other leads. So I did really wanna see, what happened? How did it work? Where did it come from? All of this information that I really wasn't paying attention to. I will say I am going to make a playlist of this, and I would if you would like to, I did make a video honoring Lacey and Connor because I think sometimes we get a little lost, and it's not hard to do with, kind of the legal motions, the sort of drama of that we forget that Lacey's family lost a vibrant, loving daughter, sister, friend, and, a woman who was just beyond excited to be a mom, and a little boy who just didn't even get to be born, and it's a human tragedy of the magnitude that you can't imagine, happening to a family, so I did wanna honor them before we got into Scott, but the first page is just you know, a kind of introduction, all of the lawyers that worked on this. Sadly, they didn't put all the interns that probably worked on this too, because, this probably took a lot of work. Comes now the people of the state of California by and through their attorney, Jeff Langaro, San Salas County District Attorney Bridget Flagler, Special Prosecutor, and David Harris, Special Prosecutor, and submit their opinion or their opposition to the defense Peterson's motion for DNA testing. So we have a wonderful table of contents. I am going to pick out bits and pieces of it because the snark, I mean, the kind of underhanded, you know, uh, highbrow but backhanded compliment of this is just amazing. So, one of these, Lacey watches The Bachelor while the defendant claims to be one. I mean, just the snark. Scott Peterson claimed he was never married. Defendant indicates that this will be the first. I mean, we've got some Chad Daybell vibes going on this guy. He must have had a heavenly vision in his closet just like Chad, because he seemed to know when his wife was going to pass away. It's magic. Did they call Miss Cleo? I will tell you guys that in my initial reading of this, on the live stream, I was trying to be not biased, but Scott Peterson, you are a terrible husband, a feckless father, and just an all-around disgusting person, if you have been adjudicated as such in my brain. That doesn't mean if the state doesn't show evidence, I would be voting guilty just because you're a douche, but I think you're a gross human being. Oh, and I love that the defendant was telling his girlfriend that he was away on business, you know, when he was with his wife making the baby's room. Just all of the grossness of it, and some of his lies just very it's going to go bit by bit. So, we are going to get, all of the information that the state is going to present, and unfortunately, the truth, or what the state can prove, does not put Scott Peterson in a very good light. Again, that being said, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but just the little bit that I've read so far, he's just a gross human being. He really is, and I also love that the table of contents is 6 pages long, just absolute, and I will be saying something about this. The, uh, autopsies, examinations of body and evidence, I will put that video that contains this information separately with a warning. Protect your mental health. If this is going to hurt you to listen to this, please don't. I don't want your sub or your views if it's going to hurt you. So I will put it in a separate video. Uh, I do, I will read it because I think it honors the tragedy, the realness, the rawness that is allegedly, but most likely, Scott Peterson's absolute refusal to grow up, and it cost 2 people their lives. So, if the state can prove that he did that, then back in the hole, my dear douche. And more table of contents. We have, I think, 11 pages of table of contents, and just to save my voice, I'm not gonna read the table of contents. This PDF is readily available. I will try to link it on the video. Good Lord knows I can't link things, but I will attempt. So we get to and then there's also a table of authorities, so all the cases that they are citing for rulings in the past. Again, I will probably not get too big into that because I am not a lawyerologist, and I am humble enough to realize that you would probably get much better information from a lawyer. So if one of LawTube, talks about this because they are lawyers, they can really explain things. I am not gonna pretend to be a lawyer, but there are just oodles of authorities and different things. And y'all know I love my authorities site. I love a footnote, it is the best thing in the world. I am a weird nerd. I love footnotes, but you would put a footnote on something, I am there. I don't know where it comes from, but I just love it. A Mo t-shirt. Will smile for footnotes. I love a good footnote. Anyway, introduction. In 2004, a jury convicted defendant Scott Lee Peterson with the murders of Lacey and her unborn son Connor. Following his appeal and petition for writ of habeas corpus, the California Supreme Court affirmed the defendant's conviction, but remanded the matter to a trial court for a retrial of the penalty phase and for a resolution of Claim 1 in the petition of writ of habeas corpus. In 2021, defendant Peterson was resentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and following an evidentiary hearing on Claim 1 in the petition for the writ of habeas corpus, the trial court denied the petition in 2022. Quote, "For purposes of collateral attack, all presumptions favor the truth, accuracy, fairness of conviction and sentence. Defendant thus must undertake the burden of overturning them. Society's interest in the finality of criminal proceedings so demands, and due process is not thereby offended." And these are all the sites. Again, go to a real lawful law lawyer, y'all. The defendant has filed a second successive writ for petition for writ of habeas corpus in the First District Court of Appeal. Informal briefing in that matter was suspended 6 months pending defendant Peterson's adjudication of the instant motion for DNA testing, as well as another motion requesting post-conviction discovery in the trial court. As noted by the California Supreme Court, quote, because this case was the subject of such widespread media attention, it is unclear what purpose a second change of venue would have served, end quote. The J&E Exhibit Opinion, page 39. That attention encompassed the initial investigation and the resulting trial and even post-trial matters. During the investigation into Lacey Peterson's disappearance, over 10,000 tips were called into law enforcement and volunteers assisted in search. Sightings of Lady C. Peterson were reported across the world, but none proved to be correct. Footnote number 1, these pleadings and any future pleadings will go forward as and refer to the victims as Lacey and Connor. We follow the practice used by the California Supreme Court, and there is no disrespect meant in the use of only their first names. 2, in addition to the volunteer search center established by the family of Lacey and Connor, defendant Peterson established his own quote-unquote tip line, but those tips were not shared with law enforcement, or not all of them, or the family of Lacey and Connor. The people are unable to say exactly how many tips were received on the defendant Peterson's tip line. Okay. Sightings of Lacey Peterson were reported across the world, but none proved to be correct, as she and her son were found almost 4 months later, where defendant Peterson reported he'd been fishing in a recently purchased boat, the existence of which he hid from everyone. Defendant Peterson's lies in this case were extensive, presented to the jury through statement and captured recordings, previously reviewed by multiple courts, and clearly preclude any support for additional DNA testing. Defendant Peterson told some witnesses he was golfing. Let's see footnote 3. This is the page where in the trial, real time in the trial, I guess, where he said that. That's also going to be for footnote 4. And it looks like footnote 5 is just explaining all the things that they found in the warehouse, which I'm sure they'll get to. So we've got our footnotes out the way, but I love me a footnote. Defendant Peterson told some witnesses he was golfing when Lacey went missing. Then he told law enforcement he went fishing, but could not recall which fish he was trying to catch. Weeks prior to Lacey's disappearance, defendant Peterson told Amber Frey and her friend that he had, quote, lost his wife, end quote. Immediately after he told them that, defendant Peterson bought the boat and searched the conditions of the San Francisco Bay online. During a candlelight vigil for his missing wife on December 31st, defendant Peterson smiled and joked with others during the vigil. He also called Miss Frey and told her he was watching fireworks in the Eiffel Tower in Paris. When subsequently confronted by Miss Frey about saying he lost his wife before she went missing, defendant Peterson would not explain how he could have lost his wife before she went missing. Peterson also lied about making boat anchors, of which several are still missing. So the number 5 just goes into all the things that they're going to go into later. So I will try to, make it as cohesive a reading as possible. Defendant's current motion for DNA testing overlooks the fact that there was DNA testing done in 2013 following the defendant's first Penal Code Section 1405 motion. After that test that did not develop any new support for his habeas corpus petition, there was yet a second DNA testing in 2019 that was equally fruitless. Furthermore, defendants' claim in support of a third DNA test post-conviction have almost all been presented in one court, if not multiple courts. In light of the overwhelming evidence that supports the defendant's conviction, his failure to establish a chain of custody for several of these items, let alone the actual evidence that the items even exist, and the prior fruitless DNA testing that has already been done, the people ask this court to deny the defendant motions forthwith. Statement of fact. Background. A. Lacey and the defendant. Lacey Denise Rocha was born on May 14th, 1975. She was one of two children born to Sharon and Dennis Rocha during their marriage. Lacey had a brother named Brent who was 4 years older than she. In 1976, Sharon and Dennis divorced when Lacey was 1 year old. Subsequently, Sharon met Ron Gransky and began to date him when Lacey was 2 years old. Sharon and Ron remained a couple together and raised Lacey in Modesto, California. Dennis Rocha had a second daughter named Amy. Amy is Lacey's half sister, and although Amy was 6 years younger than Lacey, they talked often and became very close after Lacey moved back from college. In the fall of 1993, Lacey started college at California Polytechnic State University, frequently referred to as Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. Lacey was described as a person who could brighten up a room, vivacious, intelligent, and the life of the party. While attending classes, Lacey met the defendant, who lived in San Luis Obispo and was working at a local restaurant. The first time Lacey introduced the defendant to her mom at a restaurant where he worked, the defendant greeted Lacey with a dozen red roses, and he presented Sharon with a dozen white roses. Now, at this point, Scott Peterson, and maybe I'm just projecting, I don't know, but there are certain people that give off douche mind waves that seem greasy, that don't seem deeper than, a, a shallow, deeper than a puddle. There's something about Scott Peterson when I tried to watch the interviews and things like that that just set off every single douche alarm in my mind. And this overt this seems like an over the top gesture that's meant to be noticed. It's not really about the fact that he loved Lacey and he gave her red roses and that he was, excited to meet the mom. It was more like, look at me, see me doing a good thing and give me praise. At least that's how I interpret it, and like I said, I'm not a doctorologist, but it definitely seems like a shallow person that does big displays because they want all the praise. Even if he gave you flowers, it was still about him being so kind and so great and, you know, pushing his image, his PR campaign, I guess, in this relationship, at least to me. But it could have also just been a kind gesture, but Scott Peterson doesn't seem to do those. While she was dating the defendant, Lacey got Mackenzie, a golden lab retriever puppy. Mackenzie was a hyper and playful dog, but was protective of Lacey and would take an aggressive stance if a stranger approached her. Mackenzie would also get excited and bark if people came over. In August of 1997, surrounded by family and close friends, Lacey and the defendant married at Avila Beach. Lacey graduated in December of 1997 with a degree in ornamental horticulture. In the beginning of 1998, Lacey and the defendant lived apart after they got married while the defendant finished his degree in agriculture business at Cal Poly, and Lacey worked for a company out of Richmond. The defendant's parents, Jackie and Lee Peterson, gave the defendant a crate packing business, which the defendant ran while he finished his degree. Once the defendant graduated, Lacey moved to San Luis Obispo, so she was back with Scott. The defendant sold the packing business and used the proceeds to open a restaurant called The Shack with Lacey. The business was a beer and burger place for college students. The couple operated the restaurant for about a year and a half before they sold it and moved to Modesto. The defendant told Brent, Lacey's brother, that he did not want to flip burgers for the rest of his life, so the couple sold the business. Sir, you're going to be an orange for the rest of your life. B, a new home, a comfortable lifestyle, and their finances. In June 2000, Lacey and the defendant initially lived with Lacey's mother and stepfather. Now, Ron, the Lacey's stepfather, in all things but the law, basically Sharon and Ron have never got married, but he did perform the role and become her stepdad. So that's how they refer to him for a couple weeks before they moved into a rental house. The defendant's parents, Lee and Jackie Peterson, gave the defendant $30,000 for a down payment towards the couple's first home. Now, here, I think that, and again, as a layperson, I think Lee and Jackie always giving Scott money, always giving him things, extends this period of kidultness where you're an adult. Anything you do will come after you, but you also know that your parents are going to clean up the mess. And I think in doing this, they stunted him, but that was not the reason he did what he did. He did what he did because he was selfish. I'm not trying to put the blame on the parents, but it does give Scott an extended period where he can be selfish. He can, be frivolous with money. He doesn't have to grow up fully. And, maybe the reality that he was going to be a father, that he was going to have to step up and do the things that he was supposed to do, made him cross the line. I don't know. I want the state to prove it. I've already, confessed he gives me all the douche vibes. In October 2000, Lacey and the defendant purchased a home located on Covina Avenue in the La Loma neighborhood of Modesto, not Molesto, sorry. People's Trial Exhibit number 1E depicted below shows Lacey and the defendant's house in Modesto, along with Lacey's Land Rover and the defendant's Ford pickup. And I can only imagine how lucky they felt to get a property in California. Some of the prices I have seen makes my brain hurt. So they look like they're living very comfortably in this picture, like a normal family from California. In November of 2000, Lacey began working daily as a part-time substitute teacher. The defendant started working as a manager of a newly incorporated domestic sales fertilizer products company named TradeCorp USA. The defendant operated the business out of the leased warehouse in Modesto located on North Emerald Avenue. In the beginning of July 2002, the defendant hired his first TradeCorp employee, Eric Olson, as a territory sales rep for the Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada area. The defendant traveled for work frequently. The defendant and Lacey lived a comfortable lifestyle. In December 2002, the defendant's parents bought him a $20,000 membership in the Del Rio Country Club in Modesto, where the defendant could go golf and work out. See, again, his parents are just giving him things that he never had to work for. And I'm not saying don't give your kids gifts, but if this is a pattern, if this is you always, soften and pick up the messes, then when he has a real situation that they can't clean up, it's going to be a doozy. It's going to probably hurt someone else. The defendant frequently traveled for work. The defendant and Lacey lived a comfortable lifestyle. In December 2002, the defendant's oh, sorry, I read that. Regarding the defendant's personal finances, Lacey and the defendant's expenses were high in the relation to their cash flow. In 2002, nearly 70% of the defendant's take home pay was consumed by fixed expenses and credit card debts versus 58.7% in 2001. Though the Petersons' mortgage debt was being paid down, there were medical bills that were past due, including for health insurance. Since its incorporation in 2000, TradeCorp had not turned a profit. The company had a net operating loss of $130,000 during a year of incorporation. I'm sorry, that number was 1,000 or 136,000. Uh, During the first year of incorporation, the company posted a loss of $40,000. The loss increased to $200,000 in the second year. TradeCorp was not meeting sales goals set by the parent organization and owed the parent corporate company $190,000. So Scott was doing MLS or MLM fertilizer sales. He was doing the LuLaRoe of fertilizer. This is both horrifying and fascinating that I did not know that there were multi-level marketing schemes in the fertilizer business. But if anyone can sell BS, Scott should have trademarked that. The defendant, who was responsible for TradeCorp's finances, made minimum payments and carried balances forwarded on the company credit card accounts. He also completed two new credit card applications, one in his name and the other in the employee Eric Olson's name. In the two applications, both of which were signed by the defendant, he indicated the company had a net profit of $150,000 and $500,000 respectively, both contrary to the company's financial records. Furthermore, the company failed to pay its payroll taxes in 2002 to the Internal Revenue Service and the mill tax owed to the city of Modesto. However, the records showed that the defendant used a company card to pay a fine on a speeding ticket. You're just, you're all the dumb, sir. Your parents can't pick you up out of this. That's filing a false credit report and all this other stuff. You don't think the bank's gonna do, like, a background check? They're gonna be like, "No, sir, we want to give you all of our money. We don't care if you're a reckless spender or not." The next session, Lacey and Connor. Here's where I think we get into kind of the most sad and heartbreaking of the incidents, what we're looking at here today, because in her dream, Lacey's one thing in life that she wanted more than anything, and so many people struggle with fertility and things like that, and a child is, a miracle. If you look at the odds of, how much man components it takes and how many get lost and, just finding the egg at the right day. I mean, it's just, to me, that's miraculous. I know some people are like, it's it's not a miracle, but I think it is. Um, Lacey and Connor thrilled she is going to be a mom. Due to a prior medical issue, Lacey was unsure if she could even get pregnant. After several attempts to conceive a child, Lacey was thrilled that they became pregnant in their fourth year of marriage. Excuse me. She was very happy about being pregnant and excited to be a mother. When Rose, Brent Roach's wife, asked the defendant if he was ready to have a child, the defendant replied, quote, "I was kind of hoping for infertility," end quote. Now, this is the part of the reading where my non-bias, or at least my character attacks on Scott Peterson begin, because what? That is a mega douche. We must do it. One way to Snake Island thing. How dare he say that? In front of his wife, I'm sure. Rose did not know if the defendant was joking, but noticed that he was not smiling or laughing when he made the comment. According to Brent, Lacey's brother, the defendant had appeared excited about having a child and went to most of Lacey's prenatal appointments. However, in Brent's view, Lacey was the one who wanted a family, and the defendant acquiesced to Lacey's wishes. Sometime during the summer of 2002, Brent and his wife were in the pool at Lacey and the defendant's house when Brent and the defendant were talking about life. The defendant seemed, quote, down and, quote, kind of quiet at the time. And the defendant mentioned fatherhood was approaching and he was turning 30 years old. Let's see here. During the same conversation, he confided in Brent that his job was not going well. The defendant explained he was interviewing new sales associates for his business and was hoping he would find someone who had better sales skills than he did. So everything in Scott Peterson is his life is a front. He has a business, but it's a shallow veneer. He has a business, but it's in the red. It's not working. His one employee resigned because he was unable to get insurance and, training and things like that that he needed for a job to support his family or just himself. So everything is a thin veneer to Scott Peterson in my assessment. He had Lacey and, Lacey was going to have Connor because it gave him that veneer of a family man. To me, looking on the outside, he seems very empty, and these fronts, these veneers for him are his personality. He changes his personality with the part of his life he wants to deal with at the current time. So he can pretend to be a loving husband to Lacey and go to the prenatal appointments, but he can also, go out with Amber Frey or Fry and say that, his wife had passed away. He uses people to further his veneer. If his veneer that day is that he's a single bachelor looking for a long-term relationship, then, Amber Frey is the perfect companion and prop for that sort of veneer that he needs for that point. Lacey, Connor, and having an established but failing business gives him that, respectability. He can go to the country club that his mom paid for and, have that sort of veneer of successful and fulfilled man, but it seems like he's very empty. A low-risk, healthy pregnancy. During Lacey's pregnancy, she had her routine 2 ultrasounds at 10 and 20 weeks, which predicted her due date to be February 10th, 2003. She had a healthy pregnancy and she was considered low risk. On the August 20th, 2002, Lacey saw OBGYN Dr. Tina Andrake for a routine appointment. The defendant attended the appointment. Lacey was 15 weeks and 1 day pregnant. She was very cheerful and desired this pregnancy, but had concerns because she was feeling pressure in her lower abdomen near her pelvic region. Dr. Andrake got another ultrasound and found that, things were just fine. As a new person who is first time pregnant, I mean, your body, honest to goodness, feels like it is in the middle of an alien takeover. I mean, you've got things growing, your belly growing, your chesticles growing, these cravings for things that you haven't had since you were in 3rd grade. SpaghettiOs here, SpaghettiOs and meatballs. I cannot tell you how many cans I ate of that with my first pregnancy, and I can sort of have some today, but it's still kinda, like, I don't your mind will remember something that you had in, like, the 1st grade, and you must eat it now. It's the strangest thing, like, with my last son, I could not find rum raisin ice cream, and it greatly irritated me, and I've never eaten rum raisin ice cream, but for some reason, that is what I wanted, and I was so irritated. Quote, having a boy named Connor and time for new clothes. Lacey and the defendant learned that they were having a baby boy and began planning on names whereby they decided on the name Connor. As Connor grew inside Lacey's womb, she brought new clothes. On August 30th, 2002, Lacey purchased 6 items at Motherhood Maternity. Now, I will tell you guys as a, veteran of pregnancy and such, if I could give you any advice, it would be to go look on eBay or, your local marketplace because maternity clothes are such a, short-term buy. You can get, like, an entire bundle of clothes for the same price that you paid at motherhood, maternity. And for the love of God, please bring to the front of the class so that I might judge them harshly and yell expletives at them. But whoever invented maternity overalls is a jackass because you have to potty every 5 seconds. And if you're me, this might just be a me problem and a me rant. Every daggone time you try to go to pee, those long hangy bits at the back get into the toilet, and, when you're pregnant, you just have to pee all the time. They are a tool of maybe it's Satan, whoever invented maternity overalls because they look cute, but they are a pain in the ass. Any hoozle. Uh, okay, as depicted below, People Trials exhibits numbers 39, a cropped, ruffed rayon nylon stone pant, a black and tan blouse with three-quarter bell sleeve, an embellished silk satong, red cropped pants with embroidered dark red short sleeve shell, a V-neck ruffled Georgette tan and pink blouse, a Georgette red and cream blouse with a flutter sleeve, and these are the 6 items that Lacey bought for motherhood maternity. Now, I do wanna say, I've never met Lacey Peterson before she passed away, but I've seen pictures of her, and she exudes that kind of comfortable, casual grace that very few people have, but and it's not that she took a long time, it's just a way she sits. She could be sitting in a T-shirt and, messy bun and still look like she's elegant and put together and, it she just looks very quietly graceful to me at all times in the photos that I've seen. As her pregnancy progressed, Lacey became increasingly more uncomfortable and was not feeling well. At the end of October, Lacey told her mother, Sharon, and sister Amy that she had a dizzy spell, and Lacey said she was afraid that she was going to pass out while she was walking the dog, Mackenzie, in the park. Lacey was really embarrassed because she started to vomit, and a maintenance person in the park had to clean up after her. It's very hard to judge, especially look, don't do what I did. Every single craving give into and assume it's all going to the belly because my first pregnancy kinda did that, kinda ended up with a bunch of pounds that I had to work off diligently before the next pregnancy. But still, um, it's hard to gauge if you're eating enough on a hot day or a cold day, if you're gonna exercise. It can be hard to figure out, how your body's going to run through things, because some days it'll just you have to eat a lot just to kinda stay normal, and some days your body's like, "Nah, we're good." The human body is the weirdest place we have ever been gifted, I swear. At the time, Lacey explained that she spoke to Dr. Andraki and complained about the symptoms of dizziness and lightheadedness when she walked. Uh, Dr. Indrazi instructed her to stop exercising if she felt like she had to exercise, then do it in the afternoon when she would be more hydrated and had eaten. 2 days later, on November 8th, 2002, Lacey called the doctor again with the same complaint and spoke to nurse practitioner Cheryl Smith. Lacey complained of shortness of breath while walking but denied passing out. Smith noted Lacey's symptoms in her chart and discussed self-care measures with her. You will feel short of breath towards the end. You've got, a giant baby, a bunch of fluid, and, your organs are all squished. So, it's worrying, but it's, you know, listen to your nurses, but it is a very common thing that I felt at the end of my pregnancies. Lacey followed up with a doctor's appointment scheduled for November 25th. Lacey is feeling tired and heavy but prepares for Connor's arrival. Beginning in November, Lacey said the defendant hired Margarita Nava to help clean their house twice a month. By mid October 2002, Lacey complained to Sharon that her feet were swollen and she was having a hard time standing up for any length of time and walking. Lacey said her back ached and she seemed to be tired all the time. You most likely will be. I mean, you're building a human. uh, the only thing I would say here as far as swelling, if it is a sudden, massive amount of swelling in your hands and feet, if you are having headaches or blind spots, please call your doctor. I had preeclampsia with one of my girls, and it's a good thing that I was young and dumb and didn't realize how dangerous it was. But call your doctors. They're not gonna yell at you for asking stupid questions. Pregnancy is a scary time, and part of their job is kind of helping you figure out what's a warning sign and what's not. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself if you feel like something is wrong, but don't be afraid to ask questions. This is the first time you're going through this. Heck, even the sixth time I'm going through this, you'll have different symptoms. So just don't be afraid to ask questions, but if it is a sudden swelling, if you are having headaches, nausea, any changes in your vision, please call the doctor. I'm not a doctorologist, but preeclampsia is is a big deal. Lacey described herself as being tired and heavy. Lacey resigned her job as a substitute teacher in November 2002 due to these symptoms and wanting to focus on her desire to prepare for the baby to come. Lacey set up a nursery and decorated it in a nautical theme, as depicted below in People's Exhibit number 115A. As she prepared for Connor's arrival, the sonogram was on top of the white dresser. This this picture is heartbreaking to me. I mean, all the while, Lacey is creating a room that her son will never see. She's creating a room where she'll never, lay her child down in this beautiful crib in this nautical room with a, soothing blue color. It's all a prop. And Scott Peterson knows the entire time that he's helping, put this thing together. Allegedly, he knows that none of this is going to come to be. This is just a fake veneer of looking like he's supporting his wife, and it's incredibly sad to me. Lacey attended her friend Kim McNeely's birthday party at Chili's on November 14th, 2002. She told her longtime childhood friends, Stacy Boyers and Lori Ellsworth, that she was going to quit walking because she had gotten sick while walking, and both her doctor and mother told her to stop walking. Lacey said she was later in her pregnancy feeling nauseous and always feeling tired. On November 25th, 2002, Lacey went to a follow-up appointment with OBGYN Dr. Esther Toe Dewar. She complained of swelling in her hands and ankles. Lacey reported that she completed her Lamaze class and Connor continued actively moving. At that time, Dr. Toe Dewar was not able to determine if the baby was in the fetal vertex position or the head down, kind of getting ready for birth. But there's not a lot of room there right now. So it's the doctors can sometimes feel your stomach and figure out what those bumps, lumps, and general rolly bits are. Uh, it is a skill that is beyond me because I've done this 6 times and I could never figure out what body part was where. Let's see here. The defendant predicted Lacey's disappearance. A. The defendant meets Sean Shibley at a business dinner and becomes personal. In October 2002, the defendant and his sales associate, Eric Olson, went to the Disneyland Hotel in Anaheim to attend California Association of Pest Control Advisors 3-day pest control trade show. Oh my god, you guys, if they don't have a life-size cardboard, cutout of Dale Gribble as their, you know, mascot, I don't know what's wrong with these people. I mean, I love King of the Hill probably too much, but you have a pest control thing, I would all the Dale Gribbles. I mean, and I didn't even know they had, um, trade shows for, well, basically pest control. On the first night of the conference, the defendant and Olson went out to dinner with David Fernandez, who had previously worked with Olson, and a female named Shawn Shibley, who the defendant and Olson had met at a conference. They walked to the restaurant. The defendant asked Shibley if what he should write on the backside of his name tag to attract women to him that night. In response, Sibley wrote the words, quote, "I'm rich," on the defendant's name tag because the defendant had been talking about owning two homes, having a lot of money, and launching his company and being successful. He is the Chandler Holderson, Navy SEAL of Wisconsin, I see. I'm surprised he didn't say, "I'm an Army sniper. Uh, I I shot, the sheriff." I mean, just these are so outlandish. This is Scott Peterson wants to be the man that he talks about, but he has neither the talent, humility, or drive and hard work to be this, successful company owner, two homes owner. So he is he is forever putting on a mask because deep down inside, to me, it seems like he's empty. He doesn't have real purpose. He doesn't have a real moral driving other than to fulfill his pleasures and, whatever he needs to be for that night to feel like feel more able to pretend to be the person he claims to be. Again, not a lawyer, not a doctorologist. So these are just my opinions. As they walk into sorry. The defendant told Sibley that he lived in Sacramento. During the dinner, the defendant moved the conversation away from business and began asking personal questions of Sibley. The defendant told Sibley, who is a vegetarian, that during college he became a vegetarian for a short time just for the great smexy times. Again, it seems like he's trying to flirt with her, but saying that you're, a shallow person that will change their personality to get the smexy times all while not, actually committing to the person. I I mean, it's a bold strategy, Cotton, but I doubt that that's going to make her really impressed with you. That would be a turnoff to me, but as I said, Scott Peterson to me gives off, very big douche vibes, and I probably would not have even sat next to him. I just would avoid, and I don't know why I'd be at a pest control, symposia, if you will. The defendant constantly redirected the conversation about sex, even though Sibley had repeatedly told the defendant she was engaged. The defendant pressed Sibley to determine how committed she was in her relationship with her fiance and her favorite positions for the married tango, if you will. Again, if I don't know you, like you're not my friend, we didn't haven't at least watch Golden Girls with each other and agree that Dorothy is the most savage. I'm not telling you about my smexiness life. Like, "Sir, we just got a bloomin' onion to share because we're all at this conference. I don't know you, and that's not your purse." I'd go full Bobby Hill. I mean, just the absolute gross, creepy vibes. It look, I'm surprised she didn't stand up and leave because I would've. The defendant never told Sibley he was married. The conversation made both Fernandez and Olson uncomfortable, and they left after finishing dinner. After dinner, the defendant said Shibley went back to the Disneyland Hotel bar and continued to drink and talk. Now, ma'am, Miss Shibley, I will need you to come to the front of the class and explain to me how you were able to overcome uh, your subconscious screaming that this guy is a creep, liar, and gross, and continue to talk to him. I am going to go ahead and put it on the cocktails because I surely hope that you have lived enough life to pick up on his subconscious doucheness. But it seems like alcohol was I'm gonna say alcohol. The defendant indicated that he had a lot of one-night stands, and it seemed like all the women he met were just these bimbos with no brains. The defendant was interested in finding someone who had intelligence because he wanted to have a long-term relationship. He asked Sibley to hook him up with her single friends. I need the internet to pull up when Wedding Crashers was made because, oh my god, this did he either pick this up or does this actually work for him? I mean, maybe it works on young girls who are like, "Oh, he thinks I'm especially intelligent." And what older women know about generally older men who pick naive young women is because the women of his current age wouldn't deal with his BS anymore. And he can kind of mold the younger girl into, you know, something else. It just you don't have you develop a douchiness radar, unfortunately, through mistakes most often. You know, y'all, if a person tells you who they are, believe them. If your gut is telling you that something is wrong with this situation or this person, listen to it. That's how we, evolved from people drawing in caves to people that can draw on their phones. Just throwing it out there because too many times I ignored it and it bit me in the hind end. Let's see. He wanted to have a long-term relationship and asked Shipley to hook him up with her single friends. As the night went on and the defendant pressed her, Sibley agreed that if the defendant was serious about having a long-term meaningful relationship, then Sibley would introduce him to her friend named Amber. Amber Fry and Sean Sibley were best friends. The defendant wanted to know what Amber looked like and indicated that he likes thin women. You are such a gross dickhole. I mean, it's okay to have preferences, but this feels like a direct attack and kind of something he has probably said to Lacey about her changing body. And maybe I'm projecting too much onto this, but Scott Peterson seems like one of these people that constantly has to build himself up by taking other people down. So I'm guessing that, you know, he he was not so kind to Lacey about her changing body, and to me, this seems like kind of a backhanded compliment, like, "Look, my wife is currently not what I like, so I need to find something else." And I do think that that's where you see the danger zone happening with Scott. Again, to me, as a but he seems to be a person that needs constant attention, constant ego stroking, constant, Lacey, for several years of their marriage, basically did her own thing and took care of him. And he sees the fact that Lacey will now start directing attention to a baby because of course you do. And that means that his needs might not get met. He might have to come later than his own child. He might have to, you know, endure the first couple weeks of wonderful sleep exhaustion with your newborn, where, Lacey is probably not going to be in a place to tell him, sweetie, you have a nice haircut and you look beautiful, because she's just going to be tired. So he sees the reality that Lacey is going to go full on into motherhood, knowing that it becomes about that person. Your marriage is important. Do not lose sight of that. But her attention is now going to be focused a great deal on this child, and if Scott has a child, if Scott has a little boy, then he can't be one, and he has to grow up, and apparently to him, that was worth doing unspeakable things to his pregnant wife. After the conference, Sibley and the defendant continued to communicate by phone calls and emails. In one of the emails, the defendant said he had gone to Mammoth to ski and was looking for snow bunnies up there. Sibley ended the email by saying, "See you later, HB," which stood for horny bastard, because the defendant had previously indicated he was going to have the words horny bastard put on his business cards. I think I'm going to end here for the first part. Hopefully, my audio is better. And as a great disclaimer, yet again, I only offer my opinions as someone who's maybe not been in the best relationships. And just, I see what I see. Take it with a grain of salt, a packet of ramen noodle seasoning. I, I in no way hold myself out as an expert. I just call balls and strikes like I see them. And that will continue. So, for right now, as we are 29 pages into the 370 37, sorry, he is definitely guilty of being a douche canoe, and, lying on funding stuff, but the state hasn't told me anything that I would find, you know, beyond reasonable doubt. But we are still only the first chapter into that. So I will see you guys soon. I'm going to drink some tea and honey and then come back for the second part. I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. I definitely want to see if I learn new things because I wasn't really watching trials last when this first happened. Anywho, I will see you guys later. Be kind, hold a candle of kindness. Some people are going through dark times. So have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys later. Bye, guys.